There's an aspect of the conversation that I do think I can genuinely contribute to, where it's not just the fact that the actor who played Mickey Smith in Doctor Who, Noel Clarke, is an absolute grotesque individual, but the fact that this plays into much broader. So for those of you who might be blissfully unaware of the news that broke on April 29th, 2021, written actor-producer categorically denies allegations from all 20 women, and BAFTA, who just a couple of weeks ago essentially gave him the BAFTA equivalent of a Lifetime Achievement Award, they suspended their award following the news of the allegations. When Noel Clarke appeared on stage at the Royal Albert Hall on the 10th of April to collect his BAFTA, the typically self-assured actor looked a little on edge. Viewers might have concluded that Clarke was simply overwhelmed. He was clutching one of the most prestigious accolades bestowed by BAFTA, the prize for outstanding British contribution to cinema, yet there were other reasons why Clarke and BAFTA may have felt preoccupied. 13 days before presenting Clarke with the award, a Guardian investigation can reveal BAFTA was informed about the existence of several allegations of verbal abuse, bullying, and sexual harassment against Clarke. Break down the nuts and bolts of the story itself and the allegations from the 20 women in the industry who have come forward, just to understand not just the scope of the allegations, but just how thoroughly corroborated they are by several individuals, that it's not just sexual misconduct, although that on its own should be very discrediting, but just the general behaviour and demeanour of Noel Clarke on the sets that he would run, and just how thorough they are, and how The Guardian, while obviously not being able to publish and out everything, do seem to have evidence and receipts to back up the allegations.
Ned then. Doctor Who, how has Doctor Who impacted my life? I mean, as you well know, it's just a spectacular show. It meant a lot to everyone that was in it. It was probably the thing that really catapulted me into the eyes and hearts of a lot of people. Something I really enjoyed, I really appreciated being a part of. You know, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today doing the things I'm doing if it wasn't for that show. So I think it's had a lot of impact on my life. I think it's something that, you know, one can only dream about being a part of, you know, knowing, I watched it when I was young, and then to actually be in the show was amazing. So the impact has been huge in that regard, that I probably wouldn't have a career if I hadn't done Doctor Who, or things would be very, very different. And to be a part of that legacy and a part of that history is something I consider very, very precious and special. And it's been a while since I've been out of it. Thank you for your question. Hope you're well. Shout out, Ned then.
Taking place at Noel Clarke's behest, but Noel Clarke appeared to be secretly filming many of these auditions, and apparently boasted to several individuals that he actually had several hard drives of these recordings of these young, predominantly female actors. Later on in the article, it says, according to numerous accounts, Clarke showed colleagues sexually explicit photos and videos of women, or implied he had access to them. After party, Shortsvied says Clarke smacked her on the buttocks. In July 2015, Shortsvied sent an email from a production company account thanking him for the weekend and expressing an interest in working with him one day. Clarke replied from his Unstoppable account. Unstoppable is the production company that Noel Clarke co-founded. Great meeting you. He said, would love to work with you one day. A second email arrived. Also, sent you some Snapchats, have a look. When Shortsvied checked Snapchat, Clarke had sent her a picture of a naked, erect penis. Clarke denies he slapped her behind and said he did not recall sending her an unsolicited picture of his penis. His lawyer says it was highly unlikely that Clarke would have shared such an image. Seltwhite showed The Guardian a copy of the quote dick pic, which was labelled as having been shared with her by Clarke. So that's just a couple of the many, many accusations levelled against Noel Clarke in this over 6,000 word article, report, expose, whatever you want to call it, by The Guardian. And I've seen a lot of people, presumably with brain rot, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, saying the whole innocent until proven guilty thing. Firstly, if you actually read the article, this article from The Guardian, it seems to be incredibly clear that it does have the receipts, and also of course, you can always make the argument that one or two accusations could be faked, could be, motivated by bad faith individuals, but I think 20 separate incidents of sexual misconduct and abuse and things like that from 20 women spanning over 15 years. Where there's smoke, there's almost definitely fire. And also, there's absolutely no question that The Guardian would have lawyered the hell up if necessary and have gone through the numerous legal loopholes that you would need to go through and all of the hoops that you would need to jump through in order to make an expose this thorough about one of the UK's most prominent individuals in the Lucy Osborne. And if you go through her writing history for The Guardian, you'll see that a lot of it has to do with sexual abuse committed by incredibly powerful men, including Donald Trump, Harvey Weinstein, and Gerald Murray. Lucy Osborne has, to coin a phrase, has been around the block a few times and basically knows what needs to be put in place to write a piece like this. But I know a lot of people maybe outside of the UK may be wondering, Noel Clarke is just an actor, he's Mickey Smith, he was in that Star Trek film that one time, he's really one of the biggest names in film and TV in the UK, and believe it or not, he actually is. He's a massive name in the industry. This is basically a massive hit for British film, because while a lot of films and a lot of high-profile franchises and stuff are filmed in the UK, they're not actually made by British filmmakers, at least strictly speaking. For example, the Harry Potter films or the Paddington films, they are filmed in the UK, they have a lot of UK talent, but they're made by Warner Brothers, they're financed by Warner Brothers. Noel Clarke, however, is different. He is one of the most high-profile genre filmmakers in the UK who makes his films top to bottom in the UK, with UK financing, with UK talent, and produced in this country. He's a big name in the UK industry, which is why BAFTA a couple of weeks ago awarded him the BAFTA for Outstanding British Contribution to Cinema. But we also now know from statements from BAFTA and also a follow-up report from Sirin Kale and Lucy Osborne, once again of The Guardian doing spectacular work, that BAFTA were made aware of these allegations weeks before they gave him the award. It was up and build momentum in the weeks leading up to the award being given. They just sat on the news and just didn't do anything up until the 11th hour when the panel decided, oh, it's too late to do anything now, better give him the award. Obviously, it goes without saying that BAFTA is a charity organisation. It's not exactly going to be judge, jury and executioner. However, now that we know that BAFTA essentially just ignored over a dozen accusations of sexual misconduct to be, this will destroy us. But yeah, this Guardian article basically reveals that they did try to do something, but literally at the last minute before they did the pre-record. 3 credible testimonies, including directors like Sally El Hosseini, talent development manager Palumi Akindood, a former BAFTA employee, and the actor and 2013 BAFTA Breakthrough Brit winner James Krishna Floyd. want to go public with the allegations because they didn't think they were credible or they wanted more time to look into it. There's a dozen other workarounds, and they just chose to do nothing. She recalls laughing in disbelief. He said he couldn't help it. It's just how you make me feel. I just really want to. She says, laying it on really thick and grossly and quite explicitly. I also just want to remind people at this point that Noel Clarke is married and has 3 children. After he realized an emoji of a person with their finger on their lips, which she took as an indication that she should not tell anyone about his inappropriate behaviour. That's, of course, one aspect of the story that I think is kind of vital context, in that Noel Clarke, because he was writing, he was directing, he was producing, he is one of the UK film industry's biggest names in terms of homegrown talent, and he's also got a really strong narrative behind him. You know, he's a person of colour from a working class background who's made it. And being in that position of authority means that not only is it harder to go to the authorities to report him or to turn him in, because, you know, let's face facts here, the authorities, the police, things like that, they only kind of exist to protect property and rich people, but high-profile people basically blacklisting talent because they're, you know, difficult to work with or fussy or being a diva. But this is where, at least for me, we get to the particularly terrible accusations. Mel, not a real name, acted in Clarke's debut feature Kidulthood. She was a teenager when she auditioned and was intimidated by Clarke, who was a decade older than her. He was an older man and he wrote the script, she explains. One day near the start of filming, he put his tongue in my mouth, and after it was upsetting for me to realise how fucking vulnerable and inexperienced I was at that age. I was too scared to say anything. When Clarke put together Adulthood, which was filmed in 2006, he asked Mel to appear in the sequel. I read the script and there was quite a full-on sex scene with Noel, says Mel. Due to Clarke's history of sexually harassing her, Mel says she didn't feel safe filming a sex scene with him. Dean Crabb worked as a runner on Brotherhood. Clarke was the lead actor, producer, writer, director. Crabb's job was to drive him to and from work, meaning a lot of time alone with Clarke in the car. It was just constant inappropriate comments. He was always trying to steer the conversation towards sex. Says Clarke was showing them a photo he had taken of her in a compromising position, her underwear visible. This guy says she could remember the image of her knickers on Clarke's phone so clearly she could draw it. She instinctively lunged for Clarke's phone, the phone dropped, breaking the screen. He was angry, she recalls. Basically, Noel Clarke took a compromising photo of her during a dance floor during a party, shared it around with people at his workplace who just joined in on the fun, just a bunch of lad jokes, I'm assuming. People in, generally speaking, entry-level positions, and how he just took advantage of these young people and was surrounded by people who enabled him to do it. Atherton was an art director on Brotherhood and alleges that Clarke violated industry norms for the ethical filming of sex or nude scenes. Clarke's production team hired strippers to perform some scenes instead of professional actors who... There were about 10 random people behind me watching on monitors. It appeared they turned up to watch the naked girls. The duty of care was not there for the girls. Clarke was the film's writer, director, star and producer, and the person directing the scenes. And you've got stories in this article about Noel basically in his own films writing sex scenes for these women to take part in. He allegedly sexually harassed a young female script supervisor on Brotherhood, Megan, not her real name. Clarke would openly bully her. Megan was supervising a scene that was technically very difficult. I had a huge panic attack. I went blue. An ambulance was called. After paramedics checked Megan over, Crabb drove Megan home. She remembers Megan telling her... Noel Clarke obviously denies the allegations, but he does say he will also seek professional help. So basically he denies what he's going to be seeking professional help from. But it's kind of safe to say, I think, that Noel Clarke's career is more or less over. ITV dropped the final episode of Viewpoint, which is a crime drama that was been showing over 5 consecutive... Sky was filming the latest season of Bulletproof, but it has now suspended that. Vertigo who released a statement on Twitter. It's the last thing they tweeted on April 30th, and I think you'll understand why in a minute. They say they wish to formally offer our full support to all the brave women who have shared stories as part was allowed back at the organisation. He just had to be supervised, despite the fact that he essentially took advantage of their students. In this statement that they did basically nothing to safeguard their own students. Because while I'm not going to do this video here and say that the TV and film industry is a, especially bad hive of sexual abuse and misconduct and things like that, the way that it is organised and structured do essentially mean that problems like this do not get resolved nearly as quickly as they should be. TV and film industry is also kind of unique in the workplace in that, if something happens at your job, you might have, a boss to speak to or a HR manager or something just in case if you needed to report something. But for TV and film, there's a massive chain of command. There's so many higher ups as well. Unresolved for decades, and when you have a system like that that is based on these hierarchies, it not only just leaves me in awe of the 20 women who have come forward to accuse Noel Clarke and tell their stories, but it makes me wonder, is it really just 20, or are there going to be several more stories that we're going to be hearing over the several weeks and months? I mean, we know that the Met Police, the Metropolitan Police, have received reports of sexual offence claims against Noel Clarke. So this could be taken further legally, but getting these 20 women in the first place, it should never have gotten to 1, let alone 20. But the fact that it has taken 20 women over the span of 15 years to finally, start implementing proper, efficient systems to prevent any alleged abuse from happening. Like, just going through this article, just my heart just weeps for the, the runners, the production assistants, the people who he took advantage of in the first stages of their career. Like, I was assaulted on set once. I don't know if there was any, forensic evidence or anything like that, and it was in front of people. I don't know if anybody saw, though. If they did, reputation, like, if you're a woman, don't be alone with them. Like, I could name like 5 people right now, but firstly, it's not my story to and of course it's not just Noel Clarke. I've seen this clip being shared around a lot over the past couple of days.
Turned up, and Russell was there as well. They kind of came over. So.
And Barrowman's there taking his dick out every 5 seconds. Every 5
Using a piece of the set as a skateboard, remember? He kind of had to stand on that.
Using it as a drum kit.
Noel, it's Sunday.
I can just imagine the women in that audience and Camille Coduri and Annette Badland on that stage are just internally screaming. Of course, there was this gem in a special SFX magazine edition celebrating Doctor Who, 100 Things We Love About Doctor Who. Number 9, John Barrowman's Flashing. In an uncertain world, Captain Jack's there was one guy who I worked with on a TV show, and me and him were like the only guys in that department, and this guy was basically just a bloody sex pest. He was just trying to, get with all of the women on the production. We came back on the job a year later and that guy wasn't there anymore, and I asked, why didn't you bring him back? And they told me what had happened, and they told him that they just felt really uncomfortable around him and that he was, just trying to sexually harass all of the women all the time, so they didn't bring him back. I don't know if they ever told anyone to never hire him again or something, but I do know that he is still working in the industry, taking a pretty close examination of itself and, exposing and talking about abusers that have been rife within the community and just trying to exile them and, get the women and the men in that community getting their stories told. From sexual assault to sexual harassment to outright grooming and things like that. I know that there's many other stories that are going to be coming out in the near future, but I'm glad that people are out there listening to victims, and obviously I just wish that there weren't victims in the first place.